And Thursday is here. Hello there. Good afternoon and welcome to The Pulse. We're coming to you live from our studios here in Accra. We're on a digital terrestrial TV. You can catch us live on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. We are JoyNews, independent, fearless and credible journalism. Coming up this afternoon on The Pulse, doctors and nurses in public hospitals across the country to withdraw their services on July 22nd, owing to what the group describes as the failure of government to resolve issues relating to the payment of the cost of living allowances. Meanwhile, public universities are also bearing the brunt of labor unrest as the senior staff universities of Ghana declared a sit-down strike in demand for similar concerns on the 20% cost of living allowances. This afternoon on The Pulse, we explore how government intends to avert an imminent shutdown in the public sector.
The purpose of today's press briefing is to express our dissatisfaction and frustrations about the manner in which the government and its agencies are treating senior staff of public universities in Ghana.
Concerns emerge over growing reports that the Electoral Commission of Ghana intends to use the Ghana card to compile a new voters register for the upcoming 2024 general elections. But the EC has been providing some justifications to what it terms as reforms to the continuous voters registration. We'll bring you some updates plus get reactions here on The Pulse. And tributes continue to pour in for the late Bibiani Municipal Chief Executive Alfred Amwa, who lost his life in a gory accident on the Accra-Kumasi highway. This afternoon on The Pulse, we hear from residents who say they are heartbroken by the MP's demise.
It's very, very hard for me, the kind of relationship I've built with this man over the years. It is very
Always grateful to have you here on The Pulse, brought to you by Global Communities, Digny Low, affordable, safe sanitation. Remember that this afternoon as well, we're streaming live on YouTube and all of our social media handles is at JoyNews on TV. Tweet at us with the hashtag The Pulse. My name is Blessed Sogah, and it's always a pleasure serving you here on The Pulse. Please stay. Well, this afternoon, doctors and nurses in public hospitals across the country serving notice that they would have to withdraw their services on July 22nd, owing to what the group describes as the failure of government to resolve issues relating to the payment of cost of living allowances. Now, on Tuesday, we do know that talks ended inconclusively after two teacher unions stormed out of engagements between government and organized labor on the cost of living allowances. Deputy Employment, Labor and Relations Minister Bright Tureku Brobe yesterday told JoyNews that government will not continue the talks unless all striking labor unions call off the strike. Michael Ni Ashali monitored events and now reports.
We have had to call off the meeting. We have had to adjourn because both parties, Labour and government, think that we can't do this whilst a party is on strike. So the agreement is that we are going to talk to each other. They call off the strike and we come again to meet.
What would you not be telling them?
They should exercise patience like they have done. Hopefully, as they call off the strike, we will engage and then everything will be settled. Thank you.
So how soon are you expecting them to come back to the negotiating table?
Very soon, very soon.
Well, so these are some of the excerpts of what transpired yesterday. Meanwhile, the Joint Health Sector Union say due to the inability of government to resolve their concerns, they will have to proceed on strike. There's a statement coming through from all the medical associations, which we have on your screens right now. Let's bring you a breakdown of their concerns before we get into the details of what's transpiring on that front. But you see the headline right there. It's the Joint Health Workers Union and Professional Association. So there's a release coming through, and that's the constituent group on your screens right now. The Ghana Medical Association, the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. You also have the Health Services Workers Union of TUC Ghana, and then we also have the Ghana and Hospital Pharmacists Association. Now, excerpts of the statement reads that the Ghana Medical Association, registered nurses and all the groups pointed above there, being constituent members of organized labor, made a request to government for a 20% cost of living allowances for members in the light of the prevailing difficult economic situations in the country. Now, unfortunately, like other members of organized labor, we are yet to receive favorable response from government. We had hopes that the meeting convened by government with organized labor on 12th of July, which was yesterday, would have resolved the issue, but the meeting failed to achieve its objective. We therefore served notice to government as an employer that if by the 22nd of July 2022 the negotiations on COLA is not completed, the aforementioned health sector workers will have no other option than to embark on a series of actions as spelled out below, which will in no doubt disturb the industrial harmony within the health sector, and is signed by the 4 labor unions as being pointed out right there on your screen. So let's hear from one of the groups involved, which is the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association. Joining us now is David Tinkran Chum, who's the General Secretary of that group. Thank you so much, sir, for your time here on the poll. So it appears that you're giving up on negotiations which only started yesterday. Why are you not patient just to wait on government and see if indeed there will be some results?
Good afternoon, my brother, and good afternoon to your viewers and listeners. We are not giving up on anything. I think it's a work in progress. We expect government to do the needful. As we stated in our press release, we anticipate that yesterday's meeting was going to resolve all the issues as discussed previously. Don't forget that forum, which all these composite unions are members, earlier issued a statement, even before 1st of May, asking government to cushion workers, all right? Even before Dr. Yauba, speaking on behalf of organized labor, also reiterated that point. So, I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's not like we are not waiting on government to resolve anything. I mean, you heard expressly what the Deputy Minister of Labor said, that until the teachers call off the strike, we are not going to continue the negotiations. I think that they should reconsider their decision. Otherwise,
how about recourse to the labor law? And in good faith, if you're indeed negotiating with government, the expectation is that you would, of course, call off any industrial action that you're embarking on for negotiations to proceed. That's the appropriate way of dealing with issues on the labor front, isn't it?
You are right, but they did not call the teacher unions yesterday. They called organized labor, and the teacher unions are part of organized labor. You cannot appropriate and reprobate, okay? Now, according to the Public Financial Management Act, Act 921 of 2016, by April, government should have finished negotiating with organized labor the base pay for 2023. That hasn't happened. It's an act of parliament that was palpably violated by the government. So at one point, you want to quote the law. At another point, what I say. So what I'm trying to say is that, look, we are not in normal times. And the teachers didn't go there as teacher unions. They came as organized labor. So and organized labor is not on strike. And you call a meeting between organized labor and government. And for that matter, we see no reason why they couldn't resolve the issues yesterday with that composite group called organized labor. Rather than to just benchmark on the fact that teachers are on strike to say that we cannot continue the negotiations until the teachers call off the strike.
I mean, to be fair to government, it appears that organized labor is being oblivious of the current times in which we find ourselves. The economic crunch is staring us right in the face, and this is where or when organized labor chooses to make your demands on the cost of living allowances. It's as though you're not putting or averting your minds to what's happening to the Ghanaian economy as we speak.
As a matter of fact, it's even more imperative that government cushions workers at this time. Okay, the reason for the cushioning is even more palpable now than it used to be. All right, you see, we cannot always ask workers to bite the bullet whilst others are living large. Okay, so as far as we are concerned, yes, we admit that we are in perilous times, but workers deserve better, and we are not asking for too much. We have already sacrificed
and in fact,
accepting 4% and 7%. Okay, let me make my point. Yeah. Accepting 4% and 7%, which our members did not embrace. Some even speculate that leaders have gone to take bribe. That is why we agreed to 4 and 7%. Government begged us at the time. Their dues cogent reasons why we should agree to such a paltry increase. And we agreed, okay? And we bear the brunt of it from our members. And this is not going to continue.
22nd of July, it's not a realistic timeline, is it? Looking at where negotiations are currently, it appears that government has agreed with you for further engagements on the cost of living allowances. You do not expect that within 10 days, just a period of 10 days, government will be able to handle all your concerns on COLA?
Oh, I think if government is committed, you can only finish this by tomorrow. I mean, it shouldn't take us more than 10 days.
Are you not simplifying matters? This is organized labor that we're dealing with. For instance, give us a sense of your membership in terms of the numbers, if you could give us that number, and then look at the others in, for instance, the teacher unions and other labor unions as well. The number is quite huge, isn't it? For instance, the Public Sector Workers Union are pegging their figures around 27,000 members. Government can't find the money immediately, you agree?
Well, that is what you are seeking to suggest, and I disagree with you, palpably. Now, what we are saying is that you have 3 labor centers in this country. So TUC, GFL, and Forum, all these labor centers have unions, okay, or associations under them. We are talking about public sector workers. There is no way COLA can be given to nurses and doctors and midwives and they will leave out teachers. That will not happen. What we want the citizens to understand is that we are all speaking with one voice, whether it's a teacher union or nurses union or midwifery union. We are speaking with one voice. We are saying that we are in perilous times. Our purchasing power has been eroded, and therefore government must cushion us. Government can run to IMF. Government is our IMF. So if we are in difficult times, we can only
government is your IMF.
So that is why we are asking. And I'm not too sure we are asking for too much. We are going strictly by the law. The law says that before you can take any course of action, you should be able to notify the employer 7 clear days. And that's exactly what we have done. So we are not in violation.
Well, sources are disclosing to us that, for instance, within the early stages of that engagement, the government gave the option of spreading the payments across and not giving you the 20%. How come that if you indeed wanted something to cushion you, you did not opt for that first view that was put across by government?
No such thing has been tabled. Then I was in the meeting, but I can assure you that I've been in all meetings. Government has not come with anything. We have tabled 20%. We have declared this 20% on the table. That's what we have on the table. Government can come and say, oh, I can't get 20%. Or I can, after all, at the time that we were asking for 20%, inflation was 18.5%. Now inflation is hovering around 27%. And for that matter, I'm going to give you 25%. We thank government and move on. On the other hand, the government says that, oh, I can give you 15%, 20% is too much. We can tell government, oh, 15 is too small, come up maybe up to 18 or something. So the negotiation hasn't started. So I'm at sea as to where you got that information.
Okay, so for instance, you were in that meeting, so give us a sense of what happened. The finance minister was there, in charge of the kitty. What sense do you get from him?
The meeting that was held yesterday did not table anything that you can consider it as negotiations. We didn't even start anything. We just finished with the introduction, and they wanted the teacher unions to step out. They wanted to have or go into caucus with the teacher unions, and that is what brought the misunderstanding, which later on culminated in the working out of the teachers. So it's not like we have started anything. Negotiation hasn't started. Nobody has tabled anything. So I'm at sea as to where you got that information that government tabled something, they want to spread anything. We haven't spoken about any amount of money, any percentage, and how, or the modalities of payment. We haven't even gotten there yet.
So in that regard, if it happens that government is opting for a slash in the figure, 20%, a slash in that figure, how down, in terms of the slashing the figures, how much allowance do you have in slashing?
I am not seized with the power to determine what organized labor will agree on that. But what I'm trying to tell you is that we are open-minded people. We are leaders of integrity. And for that matter, if government says that you are asking for 20%, this is what I can offer, we can begin to judge. That is where I can say that government is serious and government is prepared to resolve this impasse. So
for now, the posture of you workers in the health sector is that government is not committed to paying COLA. Is that the posture you get?
You are right. As far as I'm concerned, no, I'm not not committed to pay, because I remember the first meeting that was held, the finance minister expressly indicated that the president has informed them that they should find ways and means to resolve the matter in a manner that everybody will be comfortable. That tells you that the government has, the president himself has admitted that times are hard and therefore something must give. That thing that must give is what we expect the government to come clean with it, so that we can sit down and talk. As simple as that.
David, I mean, here's the big problem out there. Looking at the coalition involved here in the health sector, it involves the doctors, nurses, and goes even to the pharmaceuticals. The belief is that the implication of what you are threatening could be dire for Ghanaians. This is the health sector. Are you mindful of the action you want to embark on?
What you need to understand is that we are not immune to sicknesses, and even as leaders or our members are also susceptible as any other Ghanaian. So it is not a comfortable decision. That is why we didn't just jump and declare the strike action. We've given government ample time based on the details of the labor law. And I believe that, as I indicated earlier on, they should be able to resolve this matter in the shortest possible time. I actually take us 7 days to address this issue if government is committed.
So your message to those who are anxious out there that they may not find any hospital to go into by the 22nd of July?
What we are saying is that this issue should be able to, the government should be able to address this matter as quickly as possible. Nobody has to be apprehensive. There's no need to be apprehensive. There's no need to be anxious. We believe that if government is committed, we can resolve this matter by close of tomorrow.
It's as simple as that? You think so? You think, I mean, this is something that could be solved in a matter of days?
As simple as that. But I don't see this as a big deal. As far as I'm concerned, Labour has come up. Yes, Labour has come up with a position. And we are not belligerent. We are not intransigent in that position. It's up to government to also put a counter proposal on the table. And we can move on. I don't see this as a major issue at all.
I'm grateful for your time. That's the General Secretary of the Ghana Registered Nurses and Midwives Association, David Tinkranchum, joining us here. But that's not all. Public universities are also beginning to bear the brunt of labour agitations, as the Senior Staff Association, Universities of Ghana, is asking all members to withdraw their services with immediate effect, owing to the failure of government to pay the 20% of their basic salary as cost of living allowance. Hector Owahine Champong is National Secretary of the group.
The purpose of today's press briefing is to express our dissatisfaction and frustrations about the manner in which the government and its agencies are treating senior staff of public universities in Ghana. Some of the issues are mentioned below. 1, the insensitivity of government to grant the proposed 20% COLA to senior staff cadre of public universities in Ghana. 2, refusal by the government to extend generic allowances to all senior staff of public universities in Ghana. The leadership finds it outrageous to believe, as there are no such documents, which stipulates that such allowances should be given to entitled staff, which is alien to the scheme of service of public universities in Ghana. Yes. And it is used as a vehicle to create salary disparity in the senior staff category. 3, failure by the government to pay the accrued interest on Tier 2 pension arrears from 2010 to 2016, out of which some members had died due to the emotional stress they went through. It is sad to note that most of these people have served the universities and Mother Ghana wholeheartedly between 25 to 35 years and go home with a scanty amount as their Tier 2 lump sum. In all sincerity, do you expect us to continue rendering our services in the wake of of this injustice? No. We wish to place on record that, per the provisions of the Act, government has acted illegally, and the union is contemplating legal action against government in due course.
And that's the other side of the story. Let's hear from Isaac Donko, chairperson of the Senior Staff Association, Universities of Ghana. Isaac, thank you for your time. So give us a sense of how many institutions are involved here and how many universities may virtually grind to a halt if it's taking effect today, right? Isaac, I'm asking if your decision is taking effect today. And kindly unmute for us so we can hear you.
Thank you very much.
Right.
Good afternoon to you and your viewers. Yes, the strike is taking effect today. All our workers, all our members have been asked to go home and rest until they hear from us.
Yes, but I was asking about the extent of this industrial action. How many institutions are involved, and how many universities may be affected as a result of your directive?
All the 15 public universities in Ghana are affected.
Negotiations started just yesterday, and I was just asking your counterparts in the health sector as to why you're not patient enough for government. Is it the case that you can't wait any longer?
Thank you. Yesterday, there wasn't any negotiation on our part. We didn't see them to be negotiating with us because government came unprepared. They were not ready to negotiate. They were just joking with us. So as a union, we have no choice than to advise ourselves, and that's what we've done.
And then you go ahead to point out in the press release that you've given to my colleague now, pointing out that you may be heading to court over what you claim is the illegality being perpetuated by government. What's your take on the legal aspect of that? You may not be a lawyer, but what's the position of the group on this?
Yes, as you said, I am not a lawyer. So we've given our document to our lawyers. By per deliver the Pensions Act 64, government supposed to remit all the fund managers so that the fund managers can also invest the fund. So that when I'm going on pension, I will get what is due me. But it's what is happening to us. Ours, 2010 to 2016, no show. Last
Isaac? We're losing Isaac there, but his point is well made. That's the chairperson of the Senior Staff Association, Universities of Ghana. It appears well, Isaac, if you could just wrap up for us on the message to government and what it is that we need to know about your conditions. We still have some challenges reaching Isaac Donko, chairperson of the Senior Staff Association, Universities of Ghana, but we'll definitely reconnect in our subsequent bulletins and bring you some updates. But as we speak, doctors and nurses as well have also threatened to lay down their tools effective July 20 to keep our eyes on that and bring you some updates. We're also focusing this afternoon on public senior high schools in Ghana as they're on the verge of being shut down as a shortage of food supplies worsened despite government's assurances. That track full of supplies have been dispatched to schools, as we were learning of yesterday. That's not entirely the case now, as the Education Ministry has actually said that food supplies will reach the schools rather by next Tuesday. The Upper West Regional Chapter of CHAS issued a 7-day ultimatum for the delivery to be made. But this afternoon, it is emerging as well that that promise of timely delivery of the food is not being fulfilled by government. We can first of all take a listen to this report by Fred Kwame Asari, who has more from the Volta region.
Nationwide teacher union strike is taking a heavy toll on academic activities in the senior high schools. JoyNews checks in some schools in the Volta region revealed that students were left unattended to as the teachers deserted the classrooms. In Maoli School, for instance, some teachers were seen around. Sections of the students were seen in their dorms with others loitering around. Some were seen participating in sporting activities while others made use of the library. The strike action has also affected feeding in some schools because some kitchen workers who are classified as non-teaching staff have joined the industrial action. Students of the Awudome Senior High School were compelled to feed on their own on Saturday due to the absence of the cooks. The kitchen, however, resumed work on Sunday when staff being paid by the school returned from a funeral to cook for the students. JoyNews has learned that the management of some schools in the region have communicated to parents that the awards will not be fed during the strike action. The students have been relying on their provisions and food from the canteen. Some students have lamented the situation.
So we asked them like why, then they were like, everyone is on strike. Students are spending their work money because
the students hope that the government comes to an agreement with the teachers so they return to the classrooms within the shortest possible time. Fred Kwame Asari, Joy News.
Spokesperson of the Ministry of Education, Kwesi Kwarteng, admits that there are challenges with the delivery and has assured that there will be food supply, but it is actually emerging that that has not happened. We can also take a listen to the Eastern Regional Chapter of the Conference of Heads of our Sister Schools. And stay with us here on the polls. We'll bring you some updates shortly. But it's time now to turn our focus to what's happening to the economy as well. Ghana's inflation rate has hit 29.8% high. That's exactly the same rate recorded in 2003 when Ghana was under the Highly Indebted Poor Countries Program, HIPC, which started in 2002. It is also the highest figure we have recorded in 19 years. And of course, a member of our research team here at JoyNews, Isaac Kofi joins us in studio to give us a breakdown of the figures. Kindly give us the implications to what we are seeing right now. It appears that way back in 2003, this forced the Kufuor administration to take us into that HIPC program. But we're here and we're returning to IMF. So some similarities, isn't it?
Well, fascinating figures. The same figure, exactly the same figure that we recorded in 2003 when we were under the HIPC program, 29.8%. And today, June inflation year on year is also 29.8%. So as you can see on your screens, you can see the cyclical movement right from 2003 to 2022 June. We've had some good news in between, but as it stands now, the inflation rate for Ghana, which is 29.8%, is exactly the same rate that we recorded in 2003 when we were HIPC. But you should know that, Blessed, we had an inflation target of 8% plus or minus 2, and currently we are doing 29.8%, meaning we are deviating about 8 times from what we targeted. And so if you look at the figures, food inflation is somewhere around 30.7%, and non-food inflation is around 29.1%. And for the third time in a row, we are seeing imported inflation being higher, than the local inflation. And so most experts have actually attributed our inflation rate to what's happening in the international front, the Russia-Ukraine tension and other things. But domestic-wise, you can also do a disaggregation, and you see that, things like diesel. Right. Diesel, for instance, has gone up by more than 99.7%. We've seen solid fuel in the form of firewood going up by 83%. Washing soap, we all use washing soap, has also gone up
as well.
Exactly, 71% since last year, June. And famous of them is the petrol and diesel. Petrol up by 69.4%, and then diesel up by 99.7%, almost 100%.
Okay.
There.
So for now, if we're pegging the overall inflation rate, that would be at 29.8%, right? Tell us about some differing views and how some experts believe that even that figure which is being put out by the Statistical Service may be a bit defective. Well, we've seen some concerns being raised on that as well.
Yeah, because if you look at the disaggregation, you could see that most of the food items like
right.
We talk about bread, it's around over 44%.
Right.
You talk about grapes, has gone up. You talk about oil, they've also gone up. But the headline inflation, which is the 29.8%, people still believe that we could be doing more than the 29.8%. Some experts say we are doing somewhere around 40%, and that our current inflation rate does not really reflect what's actually going on in our economy. But this is the official figures that we go with, 29.8%. But if you do a disaggregation, you realize that most of the food items, if you do the disaggregation, have inflation rates above, the 29.8% that we spoke about. And then we also did some comparative analysis comparing Ghana to, other African countries. Yeah. So somewhere, let's take Togo, for instance. Currently, their inflation rate is 8%, single digit. And we look at also, let's say somewhere, Egypt, inflation is around 13.2%. Nigeria is 17.71%.
So it's not the same story
exactly.
for every country, but we are feeling the impact of it. And looking at how Ghana intends to opt for the austerity measures, there are concerns as to whether or not it will help bring down food inflation or whatever it is that we're seeking to achieve. Connect the dots for us. How do these policy measures work out to, reduce inflation and to put that in a stable condition?
Always it happens. So if you take the 2003 scenario, for instance, when inflation was around 29.8%, right after we had signed on to the IMF program, the previous years, 2004, 2005, 6, 7, 8, up to 2011, inflation rate started declining to a certain point where we even had single digits in 2010 and then also 2011. So always when we have such program, we see inflation coming down. Right. 2015, we saw the same thing panning out. Yeah. 2009, when we signed on to an IMF program, the same thing. 1995,
so the trend,
2003, the trend is still the same. So we are hoping that this time around, the program that we qualify for, we can see inflation rates actually.
And the data is more nuanced. For instance, we're also learning of, for instance, commercial transport and how it's been going up consistently.
They are the leaders, food inflation, transport, and other things like, transport fares, and then fuel and, diesel and petrol, which are actually some of the key drivers of this 29.8% inflation that we are seeing. And so, if you do a comparative analysis, you see that Ghana's situation is a bit peculiar because you see neighboring countries like Nigeria doing 17.71%, and we are doing almost 30%. And it's kind of worrying.
Troubling times for us as a nation. Transport unions are already warning of some possible hikes in the coming days, but let's wait until that happens. Let's get a picture for now on our regional outlook. Head of Price Statistics Section at the Ghana Statistical Service, John Foster Ejaho, joins us on phone. Oh, he's actually joining us via Zoom. So thank you so much, sir, for your time. Now, we targeted an inflation rate of some 8% plus or minus, and here we are. We're going all the way to 29.8%. From your desk, what's accounting for this increment that we are recording? It appears that we're having some challenges connecting to Foster. Let's try one more time if you can hear me. I was just asking about the target we set for ourselves. Now we're shooting way above that, 29.8%. I was just asking about the factors accounting for that. If you could just take that point for me again. We seem to have lost Foster there. We'll rework the lines, but Kofi is still here with us. Let's talk about some staples as well. Rice, for instance. Rice has gone up, and some other food staples are also up. But if you look at the consumption rate, that's a commodity that depends largely on importation, right? So how is that dynamic affecting as a country, the issue about importation?
So let's look at the, the import sector, or what we call the imported inflation. So let's take May, for instance. In May, imported inflation was higher than the local inflation. It actually started in April, where imported inflation was 24.7%, local inflation was 23%. Right. The same story continued in May 2022, year on year, with import inflation being 28.2%, an increase from the April figure, and then local inflation was 27.3%. And now June year-on-year inflation for 2022, imported inflation is 31.3%, and then local inflation is 29.2%. So the local inflation is somewhat close to the headline inflation of 29.8%, whilst imported inflation is way above the 29.8% that we are talking about.
Dr. Josh Bamfo is an economist. He's also head of transfer pricing and economic advisory services practice at the Anderson University in Nigeria. Thank you so much, sir, for your time. How different is Ghana's situation from neighboring countries? I'm sure we can start off with where you are, Nigeria. Kindly
thanks for having me.
Yes.
Clearly, Ghana's inflation rate. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you, sir.
I said clearly, Ghana's inflation rate has been rising at a much faster rate. At a much faster rate than neighboring countries. If you look at Nigeria's case, it's around 17.7%, and it's been hovering around that target for a bit. But part of the reason, in my view, is the fact that most of this inflation rate, especially both the imported and some of the local case, is being driven by high and poor cost. We've seen crude prices rise up since the Ukraine crisis, and some of this is being passed on to final consumers. In Nigeria, they still have significant subsidies for poor products. We don't have the same in Ghana. Since the 2015 IMF program, Ghana has had to, take away subsidies on poor products. So whenever there's significant increase in crude prices, which then translates to higher poor products in terms of cost, all right, a significant chunk of that is passed on to final consumers, such as, transport businesses. And that will be reflected in their cost and will then be passed on to other final consumers. So that is a bit of the reason behind the big disparity, at least between Ghana's case and that of Nigeria, which I'm very much aware of.
And if you look at our peers, the point is these are countries that are heavily dependent on imports. How come Ghana is being singled out, and I'm using that advisedly, in terms of the net effect?
So, in terms of the inflation rate in general, I've talked about the impact of crude oil prices, right? And how it impacted poor products and the final consumers. But you also need to look at imported inflation from the perspective of the strength or the weakness of our Ghana cedi currency against hard currencies such as the USD. Unfortunately, Ghana in recent times has had one of the highest depreciation rates across the sub-region. And that can be seen or reflected in the higher imported inflation. Because if I'm going to import the product and I have to convert my cedis into dollars, at a higher rate than before in order to import that product, I'm obviously going to pass on a portion of that increase that is due to the depreciation to the final consumer in terms of higher prices. And so it's not surprising that imported inflation is higher than the local inflation, because of the depreciation of the Ghana cedi in recent times at a relatively fast rate. So that kind of explains a bit of that, in addition to the fact that we don't have subsidies on our poor products, which we used to have before 2015 when we went to the IMF.
So I guess this is where we could bring in the perspective on fiscal policy measures. For you, which one works better? Government is opting for some austerity measures with the IMF. That's public knowledge. Beyond that, what do we need to put in place?
Clearly, I think Ghana has to move to a situation whereby we have a more robust economy that can absorb some of these unexpected external shocks, that can actually make a vulnerable economy become weaker. And to do that, we need that fiscal space. Unfortunately, over the course of the years, we've burdened ourselves with a lot of debt. Our debt to GDP ratio today is around 80%. So once you get to that particular threshold, which is significantly high, what happens is that the independent credit rating agencies might or will downgrade your sovereign credit rating, which will make investors a bit more skeptical in holding Ghana foreign bonds, such as Eurobonds. And if that's the case, then you don't really have as much forex, to intervene in the forex market to stabilize the exchange rate, especially when your import demands are significantly higher than your export supply, which is what we've seen. And that's the reason why the BOG chair talked about the fact that one of the biggest challenges is a huge balance of payment deficits that we recorded in the very first quarter.
And
so
we're getting
some of the issues.
Right, and we're getting indications now that based on the negotiations and the trends that we're witnessing, we may not have that help coming through from IMF until the first quarter of next year. Is that likely to have dire consequences for our economy?
I think it will depend on the projections that the government had prior to going to the IMF. if they waited to the very last minute where they were desperate to have injection of forex or injection of additional funds to get the economy back on track, then it becomes problematic because then your projections are not in line with, the actual timing of when that injection of funds comes in. So that becomes problematic. However, assuming that they use this as some kind of a cautious measure, saying we might run out, at this point. So this is the best time for us to really go in and seek some kind of intervention. Then it might not have a direct consequence. But what is important is that even by going to the IMF, our credibility would be up a bit. The investment committee knows that help is on the way, and they might be willing to buy Ghana Euro bonds, and that will help inject the much needed forex into the foreign exchange market, and hopefully be able to also have additional funds to support the fact the yield levy did not generate as much revenue that they anticipated to help with the financing of planned expenditures to get the economy moving.
And so finally for you, where at what point do you see the figures receding from where we're at an all-time high now, 29.8%? When are we likely to bend the curve and to come back to where's optimum for us?
So I think, in fact, this is one area that I've been racking my mind a little bit because we don't have everything under our control. Imported inflation is high. The only way we can kind of minimize imported inflation is to stabilize the forex market. We shouldn't have our currency depreciating at such a fast rate so that, purchases of such products are not charged at the higher prices to final consumers locally. So at least we will be able to control that a little bit as long as we have enough international reserves to intervene into the market, periodically. But the other part, which is the disruptions of global supply chains due to the Ukraine crisis, we really don't have much control over that. Nobody has control over when the Ukraine crisis will be over. So there's an aspect that we don't have control over, which we need to pray that things stabilize globally. But there are other aspects that we influence or control by actually intervening, as long as we have enough international reserves in terms of forex to intervene and stabilize the foreign exchange rate depreciation, and therefore reduce or stabilize the import inflation, at least in terms of the things that we have under our control.
All right, then. I'm grateful. Thanks, Doc, for your time. Let's speak now to Foster with the Ghana Statistical Service. We're just taking a look at some of your figures right here with my colleague, Isaac Kofi. But from your desk, I was trying to find out what actually is accounting for this level of inflation, 29.8%. That's where we are today.
Challenge. As I was trying to explain, we are seeing this from three sources. One from the imported one, which, as Doc rightly ended on, we have no control over. We're also seeing inflation from the domestic level. And these are things that are rightly in our domain. I mean, food prices. And then again, there's a third angle that comes to what we talk about, the human behavior, the human character. And so we are seeing sellers taking advantage of the global crisis, and people are arbitrarily increasing prices of food products. So you could walk into the same market, and for the same product, you have different people selling the same thing at different prices. And so these are the three main broad sources that are driving inflation, as is reported for this month.
We've never seen this before. Since 2003, there's been no government or regime that has moved all the way to 29.8%. It's almost as though we're going back to the dark days.
Interestingly, we as a state institution try to shy away from, the highest since days. We do so because in most cases, it makes policy, makers, it's like move away from tackling the actual issues, then becomes a political game. We try to draw attention to, as your reporter was trying to tell you, what are the drivers, what are the things that we should look out for, and what are those that we think we can do immediately to reverse the trend. You're right. I mean, it's been probably the highest in a very long while. But I think you could also agree with me that the conditions today in the global world, in our country, are not the same as it was yesterday. And so, yes, rightly so, we could be recording higher inflation today than yesterday.
So let's talk about the weight on the economy. Obviously, food inflation is high, fuel is also high. There are more items that are high. But the effect on our economy, what projections do you have there at the Ghana State School Service?
So for us, the fear and which we are operating against is the fact that, as you rightly said, food has over 43.7 in terms of the weight. And so if you are still recording higher food prices, food inflation, no wonder you hear people calling for, cola. You might not know. I mean, it's likely to worsen the plight of the vulnerable, the poor. And so we really need to tackle this and be able to pull down food inflation, because that's what everybody, spend much money on. And so if you don't do that and it keeps going up, then there'll be more agitation at the labor front, and then the ordinary person will also become poorer and poorer, and that will not be good for our economy. It can even affect health, because if the person doesn't have money to feed and feed well, health-wise, the person will not be well, and then we'll end up spending more money in treating our people.
So beyond the figures, are there some more issues that we need to avert our minds to in terms of the latest statistics that you're giving out to the public?
Yes, so, I mean, the analysis that we have done, there are two things, apart from the one that are generally known. We think that we need to begin some intense public education. I think that our people try to cash in when the country is in trouble. So you can take example like when we were hit with COVID, you saw how prices of things skyrocketed. Even when the item was not affected by, the immediate effect of COVID, we are seeing the same thing now, that people are cashing in, and so somebody goes to catch gas cutter and selling it as at a exorbitant price. And when you ask the question, the person asks, "Are you aware the price of everything is going up?" And so we need to try and talk to our people not to take an undue advantage of the global situation, and again encourage our farmers to also increase production. We are sure that when we begin to hit the harvest season, we could begin to sign a sort of relief from this trouble that we are seeing now.
All right then. I'm grateful for your time. Foster Ejaho with the Ghana State School Service. Let's wrap up with you, Isaac. The concern about private organizations taking advantage of this, and those who, especially the traders, they may do that, right? Yeah. Speculation fuels the market.
Exactly. And especially, some people feel that there's a time for us to go back to the price ceiling period, but obviously will not be good for our economy, because we still have to subject ourselves to the forces of demand and supply in the economy. So just like Mr. Ajaho said, people are taking advantage of the situation and then are trying to increase their prices to some point where they are not even supposed to do so. And the fact that everybody knows that it's being fueled by, the price of petrol, diesel, and transport fares. So everybody is giving such excuses, price of, transport and other things have gone up. So they use that as an advantage of baseline to increase their prices. But one thing that I want us to end with this conversation is that anytime we've had to go in for an IMF program, we see inflation, being high. So if the producers could show us the first slide, we can see this kind of trend. So in 2003, when inflation was as high as 29.8%, we had to go to the IMF. We saw it, decreasing right up to 2007 when it started increasing again. We had to go to the IMF in 2009. It decreased again, and then in 2015 it started rising. We had to go to the IMF again, and now started decreasing. So at a point where in 2020, when inflation started rising again, we are back at the IMF negotiation table. So we believe that if a program is approved, we can see inflation actually reducing, coming down.
Isaac Kofi with our research desk. Now, JoyNews is also learning that the earliest the International Monetary Fund can actually come through and take a decision on whether to give Ghana a deal will be in the first quarter of 2023. That's according to sources close to the fund. It follows a crunch meeting held by the IMF officials with Parliament's Finance Committee yesterday. Parliamentary correspondent Kweku Asante has details of that meeting.
Officials of the IMF held talks on Tuesday first with Vice President Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia before heading to Parliament to meet members of the Finance Committee. According to JoyNews sources, the fund is seriously concerned about the country's debt position and will undertake a debt sustainability analysis before agreeing on a deal with government. The minority side of the committee had raised issue with government piling on debt and tasked the IMF to ensure a deal that would not worsen the country's debt position. It also emerged at this closed-door meeting that the earliest government could hope to get a deal with the IMF is at the end of the first quarter of 2023. The IMF also raised issues about the country's international reserves and taxed both sides of the political divide to find means to shore it up. The IMF team in Ghana is expected to wrap talks with various segments of the political class next week, after which Finance Minister Kenneth Ofori-Atta will present to Parliament the 2022 mid-year budget review.
And you're still with us here on The Pulse there on the Joy News channel. We'll return shortly and bring you some more issues, especially with regard to the Electoral Commission, which is planning on using the Ghana card as part of registration for the voter ID. We'll bring you details shortly. Please stay. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Now, the Electoral Commission may now demand the Ghana card as proof of registration for the voter identification card. The new regulation is reportedly contained in a proposed constitutional instrument which will allow the Electoral Commission carry out continuous registration exercises. There's been a mad rush for the Ghana card in the past few days, with scores of people stranded due to congestion at various registration centres. However, it is emerging that the EC, as part of its new reforms, may now be requiring the Ghana card as part of the requirements for placing one individual on the voters' register. There are growing reactions, especially from the minority owners. Joining us via Zoom to have a discussion is Member of Parliament for Agotimas-Yope constituency, the Honourable Charles Agbeve, who's joining us via Zoom. But first, take a listen to the minority leader, Haruna Idrisu, express some concerns about the NDC's frustration with that process.
A matter that may threaten the stability of our country, since it borders on the right of a Ghanaian citizen to vote and to exercise that inalienable right to vote. Our understanding as we pick it up is that the Electoral Commission of Ghana is desperately planning to discard the 2020 voter register and replace it with a new voter register, which register is cost the taxpayer and the people of Ghana to build with $80 million thereabout. So in 2020, the Electoral Commission, against all sound and technical advice, replaced the 2016 biometric voter register. You all recall that. This decision of the Commission was without consensus by all political parties, civil society, and critical election stakeholders. In pursuit of that political agenda, the EC undertook a new voter registration exercise, which currently puts the voter population of our country at 17,041,340 voters. Our understanding is that the Electoral Commission is seeking to make the national ID card the only source of justification to register onto the voter ID card as their basis, the voter register. Our concern primarily is that in the past, since 1993, voter registration exercises that have been undertaken, you normally have the provision of a guarantor of other persons guaranteeing for persons to get onto the voter register insofar as it is established that they are Ghanaian and are of age and of sound mind and to participate in Ghana's electoral process to vote and be voted for.
Let's bring in Honourable Charles Egbefe, now Member of Parliament for Agotumeziope constituency. His constituency shares borders with neighbouring Republic of Togo. He's concerned that giving previous accounts of the registration exercise, some more Ghanaians may be disenfranchised as a result of this new regulation. Thank you, Honourable, for joining us. So, first of all, share your concerns with us with this process. Is it the case that the NDC is fighting what many see as the lawful requirements, where the Ghana Identification Authority is clothed with that power of proving citizenship, I guess?
Thank you very much, Blessed. And a very good afternoon to your viewers. Like you rightly said, I share the sentiments expressed by our leader, Haruna Idrisu. With respect to my constituency, for instance, Blessed, as we speak, the NIA office in my constituency does not have Ghana cards. So anybody who goes in there now to register does not get a card. You're only given a small paper and your information is put down, and when they get a card, they call you to come for it. Blessed, my constituency is a rural constituency. The gentleman may have to travel by motorbike to cross a road, pick a vehicle now, to the NIA office in the district capital in Petwe. He gets there, and then there's a queue. He can't get a card, and you're asking him to come again. Blessed, he will not come. It is excruciating economic hardship. Basically, that kind of money to be boarding vehicle in and out.
Yeah, but I guess as a politician, you are interested in the integrity of the electoral roll, isn't it?
Listen, I'm very interested in the integrity of the electoral roll. Very, very interested, because that is the way to go. But like we are saying, we've cited the CI, the draft CI EC wants to bring. And it is obvious they are trying to create a new register altogether. We don't have a problem with that. But where people don't have the cards and are struggling to get the cards, and the EC, the NIA, does not have the cards to issue, what do we do? If it is new people, in the case, what is wrong with the current register they have created? What is wrong with the current register they created?
Yeah, but I guess this is the claim of the NDC, that the EC intends to create a new voters register. That's your understanding of the CI. It does not necessarily mean that the EC is creating a new voters register, is it?
That is what we are understanding from the draft CI.
As the NDC. As the NDC,
right? Our members on the subsidiary legislative committee in Parliament, they are giving us this information. That is draft CI. If there's going to be a change, fine. But for now, what we have seen, what our members on the subsidiary legislation committee have cited, and that was the basis on which leader Honorable Haruna Idrisu made that press conference. That was the basis, and we stand by it.
Yeah, but the point is, if there are so many things in that proposed constitutional instrument which you, as members of Parliament and by extension politicians, should be happy about. The fact that, for instance, we now have the final opportunity for a continuous voter registration exercise, except that the requirements may now be for you to use the Ghana card. So that's some level of improvement in terms of our voter reforms, isn't it?
Yeah, even if it is continuous, Blessed, even if it is continuous, you are going to open the register for new members, those who are of age, to now join, to also get opportunity to get a card to vote. And you are demanding them to use the Ghana card. And the guy in my constituency is not getting the Ghana card. What does he do? Is it not a recipe for disenfranchise the guy or the lady? That is our concern. The last time I spoke to the NIA director in charge at my district, he said over 1,700 members, constituents, have registered and are yet to receive their card. And because people go and they don't get their card and they go home, they send a message home, and those who have not even gone to the office at all don't attempt going at all. And so there's a challenge. Let's address the challenge. I believe EC should continue with their draft SCI program. We are not having a problem with it, but they should what? Discuss. They should. I mean, okay. Why is wrong coming to discuss with us the challenge?
So without the Ghana card, which other forms of identification would you want to ensure at the same time the integrity of the voter register? The concern is if you look at the biometric features on the Ghana card, for instance, it makes the process much more easier. Don't you agree?
I agree. But from time immemorial in this country, anytime we open the voters register to register people, if they don't have the documents demanded by the EC, we go for a system where people with the qualified documents. So in this case, we want us to use Ghana card. Then persons who have registered with Ghana card to vouch for those people so that they're also registered. It's not simple like that. You have, in fact, you cannot disenfranchise any citizen of this country, deny him his or her rights of getting a voter's ID card.
Why are you speaking as though the Electoral Commission is targeting some persons deliberately just to ensure that they are not captured ahead of the 2024 elections?
Brother, we've seen this in the past. My constituency has always suffered as a result of EC registrations. People are targeted that they are not Ghanaians and frustrated, harassed from getting to register. And that's why I'm very, very, very concerned. You get into the news and you see an old military officer who was even blind was being denied of getting a card because he was alleged to be a Togolese. And it is very difficult. Who determines who is a Togolese or a foreigner? In my constituency, even my ancestral lands are in Togo. People think that go and farm Togo and come back. That's where they get the land. There are people who are Ghanaians who have moved to settle there because that's where their lands are, and they come home occasionally. Who determines who is a foreigner?
Yeah, but our laws are clear. Our laws are clear. We don't want to have Togolese on our voters' register.
Exactly.
You agree?
Nobody will ever allow. I will not allow a Togolese to be registered onto the register. I will not. I will never condone that.
Yeah.
But when the person is a Ghanaian, I will fight it. I will make sure that person gets registered.
No. But the point is the EC is trying to sanitize the system and to ensure that our electoral roll is safe, and of course we get rid of minors and persons who are also foreigners. So this debate may not end anytime soon, right? It's simply because maybe you are in a position and that's why you're making all of these points as the NDC.
No, it is not because we're in opposition. As political actors in this game, we have to support the EC to make sure we sanitize the system. It is our duty. And it is going to be good for all of us. You just prepare the register 2020 to use for the 2020 election. A very good register as that. What is wrong with it? Blessed. We must put in the system.
And I'm interested.
Nobody.
Yeah.
Nobody in this country is disenfranchised. That is our concern, and that is the import of the press conference that leader made yesterday.
Okay, you're also making another claim about some $8 million that the Electoral Commission intends to use. Where from that figure, and what proof do you have to back the claims you're making?
Leader mentioned $80 million.
80, yes, million. Right. Precisely.
$80 million. That is the approximate amount EC may require to produce a new register. That's what the experts and members of the subsidiary committee hinted in. Of course, it takes advice from the experts and the members of the committee.
Yeah, but the EC is not asking for the amount. So why are you putting up that figure?
They will definitely need money. Blessed. They will definitely need money. If they are going to open a register for new members to be added, they will need money. So we are concerned. We should be concerned. Why would you just discard the register you prepared some 4 years ago, or less than 3 years ago, and say you are creating a new register in the name of Ghana card, when most people are not still having Ghana card?
Okay, I'll give you the final opportunity, your message to the Jean Mensah-led commission.
They should go to IPAC and discuss these issues with the political actors in this country. They should seek advice, they should seek opinions, they should seek inputs into all these things. They shouldn't just stay because they have been given a mandate. It makes it more consensus building. You have a lot of input from various actors in the political space into your work. And when you bring it to Parliament, it becomes difficult for us to challenge because our members will be there to add their voice to it. And then finally, I still insist and want to plead to all our colleagues and members who have not got the Ghana card yet. Please go get your Ghana card. When you go to the office and they say the cards are finished, please just register. Get your name into the system. Because, blessed, the NIA is telling us that they've registered over 16 million people. But they are not telling us the number of people who have got the cards, the number of people who are yet to get their cards, and the number of people who have been registered and cannot find their cards. That's another challenge. You have somebody registered, he goes to the office and they say his card is out. In Agotwation, for instance, and they say his card is out. It's found in the Eastern region. So we need these details. When we get this data and these details, then we can all sit down and move forward.
All right.
But I still insist. Why do this card? A new register you just prepared recently. Add on to it.
Anyway, we'll see what then happens in the coming days. That's a Member of Parliament for the Agotimeso constituency. I'm grateful so much for your time. Majority Leader Osei-Chem Mensah-Bonsu is suggesting a cut in the number of ministers to 19 to help save the public purse. This, he says, should exclude regional ministers who represent the president in their jurisdictions.
Public lecture was on the theme, the constitutional review, the perspective of a legislator. According to the majority leader, at least $50 million is spent on electioneering by a presidential candidate from the party level to the national election. Research by the Center for Democratic Development, premised on the 2020 general elections, estimates about $600,000 is spent by members of parliament to secure their seats. In checking the investments made to win elections, the majority leader in parliament suggests the Westminster system of government, where the Prime Minister is more accountable. Osei-Chem Mensah-Bonsu sides with a World Bank research which suggests small unitary countries like Ghana are better served with prime ministers.
Where we are going as a nation is not sustainable. We are getting on a very slippery road in terms of monetizing our politics, both parliamentary elections and presidential elections. And I think that, as a matter of fact, my personal preference is with the Westminster type, where the prime ministers are much more accessible to us. One, and then in terms of expenditures, they spend far, far less in getting themselves elected from the constituencies, right? And that obligation to satisfy sponsors is much, much less. And with that, we'll be able to deal with corruption. And then again, because the prime minister is a member of parliament, peer review should tell you that you can't be a prime minister when I know that before you became a prime minister, you had only one house. And 4 years after becoming a prime minister, you have 10 houses. My friend, where did you get it from?
The Member of Parliament likens the powers conferred on the president to that of a monarch, since he makes over 5,000 appointments to public offices. Mr. Chairman-Sabons believes there should be a review in the constitutional provision.
Indeed, any president appoints more than 5,000 officers into public office. We are still counting. This certainly, Professor Chairman, is a monarch that the Constitution has created. The rest of us citizens hold him in awe, and even when he strays, it is difficult to talk straight to him. This arrangement needs to be revisited. It cannot be good for our growth. It cannot be good for the growth of democracy.
He further proposes ministers who are not part of cabinet should be cut off to save the public purse.
Many of our ministers do not add value to our governance. That's the truth. And I'm not here talking about the current MPP administration. I refer to all administrations since 1993. The time has come for us to seriously introspect on this. And hasn't the time come for us to place in the Constitution an upper ceiling on the number of ministers of state that we should have? As I've already stated, cabinet ministers assist the president in the evolution of policies. That is according to Article 76 of the Constitution. All bills and agreements that are presented to Parliament are underpinned by governmental policy and principles, which the cabinet ministers propose to cabinet. So if you are not a cabinet minister, you are not part of the process of the evolution of policy.
In concluding his lecture, the legislator said introspection into Ghana's constitution, which has a cumbersome amendment procedure, is long overdue. Nanaya Ochima, Joy News, Kumasi.
We are building up to that action this weekend. The New Patriotic Party General Secretary John Boydu will this weekend be seeking to retain his position when he comes up against 5 others. He believes his experience can come in handy in the party's quest to retain power. Joseph Akable has today's edition of the special build-up to the NPP's national officers' elections.
The National Executive Committee decided by unanimous decision of all members present to suspend Mr. Kwabena Jepon indefinitely.
John Boydu became acting NPP General Secretary at a time the party was in turmoil. Its national officers, including Chairman Paul Afoko and General Secretary Kwabena Jepon, had been suspended. He went on to hold the position substantively as he led the party into victory in the 2016 and 2020 polls.
My campaign is simple. My campaign is premised on the fact that the New Patriotic Party is at a critical moment. A moment that calls for experienced people. A moment that calls for combination of the youth, women, and the strength of the party in order to liberate the energies of our party people towards victory in 2024. We will keep our campaign clean. We know that this baby is our baby. We are like the woman who Solomon decided that they should kill the live one. The one that the baby doesn't belong to said that they should divide it into 2. The woman that the baby belongs to said they should give it to the woman. I, John Boydu, with these executives, we have toiled to bring this party to this far. It will be difficult for us to be part of any agenda to bring disunity. We believe that we are winning and winning hands down. That one, there's no 2 ways about it.
His critics, however, say he was part of a team of executives that saw arguably the party's most abysmal parliamentary performance in the 2020 polls when it recorded a net loss of 32 seats. He, however, believes he's the most experienced hands the NPP can rely on.
Check, in the year 2020, in the midst of COVID, How many political parties in government won elections when they contested elections in the year 2020? The almighty Trump lost. Angela Merkel lost the election. The party lost. And a lot of political parties, if you go to India, they lost the election in 2020. We were almost the only political party that won under COVID in 2020. It should tell you that because of the challenges of COVID, for instance, a lot of the things that we expected to deliver, for instance, we only grew by 0.4%, which is never happened in this country. Throughout the world, only about 30 countries had a positive growth, and Ghana was one of them. Our management of COVID was par excellence in terms of annals and history of how COVID is managed. That is the only reason why we managed to win.
Mr. Boadu's political career has been one of service to the party, holding many positions including National Finance Officer, National Youth Organizer, National Deputy Communications Director, and now General Secretary. Prior to his rise at the national level, he also served the party as well at the grassroots, from polling station chairman to constituency secretary to regional research and elections officer. He believes the support of key party officials comes in handy in his quest to break the eight.
The party is not run by one person. The party is run by numerous unidentified people who offer their services at no cost to the party. So sometimes people are talking, you ask them, what are they talking about? This is a party that owes our successes to the full soldiers of our party. And I can say with authority that the people you see here are people coming from all sectors of our party.
Number one on the ballot, incumbency advantage, strong access to party structures leaves analysts little choice but to tip Mr. Boadu as the clear favourites to win over the weekend. Stay with your election headquarters for the very latest.
Candidates continue to crisscross the country in a bid to get the mandate of the delegates. Part of the contest to be on the lookout for is the Nasara position of the New Patriotic Party. One man is in studio with me, Abdul Rahman Diallo. He believes that the delegates must entrust him with that position of being the Nasara coordinator, so he'll be able to turn the fortunes of the party around within that constituency. Thank you so much, Diallo, for your time. It's good to see you after a very long time. You've gone into hiding, have you?
Not that much. Right. Actually, we are behind the scene doing a whole lot of things to put together a very favorable contest to which we've actually put together all these things in support of the party.
But the contest happening this weekend, how confident are you that the delegates will give you that opportunity to serve as Nasara coordinator?
Well, I'm very confident because there's a lot of things that I have done within the party and will do and aspire to do that will make the candidates, the delegates, very comfortable in the run-up of this particular election. In fact, I've toured around the country, I've spoken to people, and I've contributed a lot. Because I started 32 years ago as a photographer to President Kufuor, which is
quite a
lot. Yes. I was the family photographer.
So you've been around ever since?
Absolutely. And I've been very loyal to the cause.
For those who may not know about your service to the New Patriotic Party, what concretely can you point to say, well, this is what I've done, particularly for the Nasara constituents? These are people that I'm sure you're confident with. What are you able to point to them that, well, I've done A and B, and for this reason, you should give me that opportunity to run?
I'm an animator, I'm a website designer, I'm a graphic designer, I'm a photographer.
Right.
And I'm a visionary person as well. Basically, I due the concept that His Excellency the President raised the MP's hands to promote the good standing between the parliamentary candidate and the aspirant.
Right.
And I did it for 3 elections, which I can say on authority. We have about 48,000 billboards across the country. And I supported the party in that direction.
Wow. So that's what you've been doing in terms of giving your technical support to the party.
Absolutely. And more so, every single project of the party that needs to be highlighted to the rest of the world, I do. And since my production, my working with President Kufuor as his photographer, even at the presidency, there's a lot of media houses that cut across that I have basically sent the videos, the pictures, the write-up to them
So what you mean to tell us is that you've been projecting the party in a good light ever since the 2000 when of course you were in power. Absolutely. But beyond that, your Nasarawa constituents would want to know what plans you have for them and what message you are even selling to them in the first place ahead of that crucial elections this weekend.
Well, I created the Zango for MPP, which is a wing of under Samia Wuku. It's part of this volunteer group.
Right.
In 2020, for instance, what we did was that I collaborated with Global Medical Team and we did health screening almost the entire country. What we actually do was to narrate the goodwill of the party, how people should take care of their health being a very vital aspect of life, and quite a lot of things that I do. But basically, as I speak to you, for me to be the Nasarawa coordinator, I have put together my 32 years experience with President Kufuor because I meet all kind of characters that come to him. I take their complimentary cards, I take their pictures, I give it to them through whatever means that they have to have. So I have learned and studied a lot. So
you have been working for the party, except
Absolutely.
that you've not been out there. Your name,
Sure.
your face hasn't been out there. But this is a post or a contest that is not drawing a lot of attention. And you know that so well, that the Nasarawa position, when it comes to that side, a lot of people within the party don't really focus on it. What are you going to do to change that narrative around the position?
basically, I have registered, as I speak to you, 117 entities under Zango. And I want to change the narrative in the Zango. The reason being that most often than not, people will actually associate Zango with some very bad stuff, violence and all that. But let's take it for Zango Food. These are some of the registered companies that I have with the Zango.
So you've registered some organizations, for instance?
Absolutely.
Just to
117 to make sure we create employment. And the household name goes, the Zango should be a household name across board. Because, for instance, when we do Zango Food, for instance, everybody knows our Tuozafi, our Wache, our Tubani and that. It's a very nice thing. Why don't we do a franchise with it so that the girls can put on their hijab, their abaya, and sell the food in a very dignified way?
I'm glad that you're talking about this because, for instance, over the weekend, the president was at the celebration, the Eid celebration that you did, where he talked about his reiterating his commitment to developing the Zongos. The belief is that the promises you made to the Zongo communities as the new patriotic party, you have not fulfilled many of them. Is that correct?
We have
assertion?
2 years, and I can assure you as a Nasarawa coordinator, the programs that I will put across will help bring back even the Zango ministry.
Yeah, but many would say that you've lost that opportunity as a party, haven't you? You made so many promises. For instance, the Zongo Development Fund was part of the issues that you brought up as a political party to change the situation in the Zongos, but you haven't done much ever since, isn't it?
Well, with the Zongo Development Fund, they've done a lot. Probably the communication hasn't gone down well, but they've dug a lot of boreholes, they built a lot of schools, they've done quite a lot of massive projects for the Zongos, especially when Boniface was the minister for Zongo. They put together a lot of astroturf all across Zongos. Some of the roads that were initiated through those projects. So the Zongo ministry and the Zongo Development Fund has really done a lot of services to the Zongo. But what we also need to do is to hit the ground running by creating employment opportunity straight to the Zongo people so that basically their lives will change, the narrative are going to change in all spheres. That's why I've gone ahead to do this 117 companies under Zango so that we will bring to bear quite a lot of things that has to be done with regards to the upliftment of the Zango.
You have just 2 days to the elections. How many have you been around the country, and
Yes.
what are you picking up from the grounds? The belief is that your grassroots, the grassroots of the NPP, are not too happy with the reorganization process.
Well, in every institution or organization, you will have people who are not content with certain structural things that comes into being. But I first believe that with this kind of massive employment project that I'm going to do, I can assure you, within the 2 years, we're going to create more than 200,000 jobs.
Are you just mentioning figures to us? We've heard the figures before.
Absolutely. You've heard figures before, but these are practical things that we are bringing on board. Something that will really, really change the narrative. And that's what we are bringing on board. So watch out for a very massive employment scheme that we are putting across.
Okay.
All related to Zango.
Right. We'll be wrapping up. Let me give you the opportunity. Delegates are watching. I'm sure that some other persons who would want to know you more ahead of that election are watching. What will be your final message to them? And what will be the message?
I wish I can mention a few of the companies that have been established. Right. We have Zango app here. The Zango app is just like the Uber services.
Okay, so what you mean to say is that you've even started rolling out what you have promised already?
Exactly.
Even before the elections?
Yes. The Zango app actually with an Uber services. Currently, as you speak to you, we are negotiating for about 300 cars to start with. And we are not going to collect deposit from anybody. We are giving them the cars to work and pay maybe for a period of 5 years. Because when you put down a figure that people should pay this much before they can access, it means only the rich can pay and give it to the gentleman who is good enough to drive but doesn't have the resources just to train him. And this is some of the things that helps to create the adage, property owning democracy, a system whereby you create the environment that becomes so conducive that people can have access to things that they can do and own up. These are some of the things. As I speak to you, the concept is being looked at by a gentleman in Nigeria who wants to take the franchise in Nigeria. We cannot allow Uber, Yango, and others to be taken over by only the
So what you intend to do is to expand it so that more and more people...
We have Zango Construction, we have Zango Multimedia, we have Zango Food, we have Zango Schools. This is the time that we need to have our own schools.
Well,
our children...
And all of these companies have been registered and certified. That's why you're bringing it.
And these are Zango Beverages, Zango Housing. The Zango Housing is a very beautiful project. We want to put that. We've located about 58 different spaces to which we are doing a 4-story building with the down being a crèche, and the 3-story being a place that we will give it to our young men and women who are kaya youths, so that they can have a link by Zango Transport taking them to the industries for work to and fro.
So it looks like there's a lot coming up, but let's see what the delegates will say, during the weekend. But I'm giving you a minute to send that message across to them.
Fellow delegates, I'm Abdurrahman Diallo, the longest serving aspirant in this particular contest. 32 years with the party, very loyal to the party, and I have the goodwill to establish a very great facilities like the Zango Abattoir and others, so that at the end of the day, no one will be left out by saying we didn't get a job, we didn't get a job. At least what you take care of yourself as a human being will be taken care of. Because I believe very well that we all need to live in dignity, with respect and all that. And I'll bring sanity that prevails within the party structure using the Nasara system. So watch out, the Nasara is going to be the money bag of the party.
All right then, and that's Abdurrahman Diallo there for you. But of course, even as we prepare to round up on the show today, tributes continue to pour in for the late Municipal Chief Executive for BBNE Ahia. So in the Bakwai area, Alfred Amwa and his driver who lost their life. The former government appointee met his untimely death after a trailer truck with registration number AS4229X lost control and, of course, crashed into their vehicle after reports of the sad incident. When the Vice President, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, took to Facebook to commiserate with the family, and portions of his post there for you, indicating that sad to hear of the death of Honorable Alfred Amwa, MC for BBN Ahiwanso municipality, and his driver, Samuel JC. Both Alfred and Samuel have been dedicated to patriots who served with dignity and passion. May the souls of our dear brother rest in perfect peace. So that's what the Vice President posted earlier today. Well, we've been on that premises within the municipality itself just to gauge the mood there, and here's what residents have had to say.
BBN Ahiwanso Bekwai, Alfred Amwa, and his driver Samuel Jesse. The duo lost their lives to a tragic accident. Here in the municipality, residents say they are heartbroken by his demise.
Up to now, I've not so been able to come to terms with his demise. I tell you, from yesterday to this time that we are speaking, I've not been able to close my eyes because I feel it is not true. I feel people are just telling a story. But after seeing some of the pictures flying around, my brother, it's a hard thing for us. It's very hard. It's very, very hard for me, the kind of relationship I've built with this man over the years.
And it's now time for our conversation with our partners, Deutsche Welle. DW's Thomas Sparrow is joining us with some updates from Europe. Thomas, so let's talk about the decision by Russia together with Germany and the agreements that we're learning of with regard to this Russian-Ukrainian war. What reactions are we getting, and what more can you tell us?
Officially is due to maintenance repairs that happen on a regular basis, but the German government, German authorities in particular, are fearing that that halt could be permanent. In other words, that Russia, after the 10-day maintenance period, would not restart distributing gas to Germany and to Europe through the very important Nord Stream 1 pipeline. This Nord Stream 1 pipeline, just to give you a bit of context, is one of the most important pipelines precisely bringing gas from Russia to Germany and then to many other European countries. And that's why there is concern here as to what a possible permanent halt would mean. This is being described here as Germany preparing itself for the worst, so hoping for the best, but preparing itself for the worst. And those preparations include making sure who would be prioritized in case of a permanent halt, asking consumers and industries to reduce using energy as much as possible, also making sure that storage capabilities can be increased through different ways, including using alternative energy sources or even going to other countries for supplies as well. So all in all, a very serious issue here indeed, and Germans are waiting very carefully to see what will happen after this 10-day maintenance period. Russia rejects that it is using this as a political or economic weapon, but as far as the German government is concerned, they see this as certainly a way in which Russia is trying to exert political and economic leverage. They're describing it as an economic weapon that's being used or leveled against Germany.
Just how dependent are European countries, and in particular Germany, on Russian energy?
I'll give you a statistic that clearly explains that. Before the war in Ukraine started, Germany imported around 55% of its gas from Russia. That is a very high amount. Now, Germany is not the only country in Europe that is dependent on Russian energy, but this 55% is clearly a matter of concern. Now, Germany in the last few months has indeed reduced that dependency on Russian gas to around 35% by, as I mentioned, looking to other sources of supply, by trying to use also renewable energies, by asking consumers to reduce their consumption of, in particular, gas. But it is still an issue of concern precisely because of the possibility that it could be used by Russia as a political weapon, as leverage when it comes to their own positions in this whole conflict. So the German government is certainly very concerned about the current situation. It is working hand in hand with European institutions, with other partner countries to try and guarantee that in the end, not only in the immediate term now, also in the coming winter, but in the long term, that Germany can guarantee supply and that shortages will not be permanent.
How are citizens reacting to this development?
Essentially also concern from German consumers. Now, there have been recent polls where people here in Germany have been asked to basically decide what their economic situation is, or at least describe it. Many still describe their economic situation as being good. However, they think that in the next year, in the next coming months, that economic situation will worsen. And it's important to stress that here in Germany, the economy is paramount to understanding how Germany's political and economic system works. In other words, Germany's economy is the base of Germans' well-being. And when that starts to become difficult, when there are problems here in Germany, there are concerns not only among politicians but also among consumers. If you hear what German authorities are saying, they're saying that these prices that are very high, inflation that is very high, is a very serious matter that could create even social unrest, that could widen the gap between rich and poor in the country. And that's why essentially a lot of measures are now being discussed and decided on to make sure that Germans can be helped in the short term, for example, by giving them certain money to pay those high energy costs, but also in the medium and long term when it comes to making sure that they don't suffer economically because of these current situations.
Thomas Barrow, thank you. And that's all we have for you here on the Pulse on the JoyNews channel. My name is Blessed Sogah. Don't forget to log on to myjoyonline.com. You have updates on the stories there. Next, it's Let's Talk Showbiz.